And you used to get videos of maybe families that owed money to a shadow bank or things like this, and the entire family is laying dead with knife wounds or bullet wounds. Hey Laowinners, it's Laowinners here with another video. Let me turn that off. The radio just reminded me of something, and I have all my cameras and stuff because I'm headed to a little secret event. But I have all my cameras set up in here, so I figured I'd shoot a little video and tell you guys about something that has changed a lot here since I moved in China, and that radio station just reminded me. And that's kind of the enforcement of law here in China. And it's a big topic, there's a lot to cover, and I'm not going to get into statistics or anything, but my general feeling of living here now over 8 years, how crime has kind of shifted into what crimes I see and how they're dealt with. Now, when I first arrived in late 2008 in Hong Kong, I wasn't too shocked by anything I saw around me. It just looked like a tropical version of New York City. I didn't see any sketchy things going on, and Hong Kong might have had a criminal past with the triads and all kinds of things like that. But just like New York City, it's kind of cleaned up, and you can go to New York and Hong Kong and pretty much not see anything sketchy. In Hong Kong, probably the worst thing that I have seen is around the Chongqing mansions, where the Pakistanis or the Indian people will try to offer you drugs, things like hash or cocaine. Other than that, maybe the odd pickpocket here and there. You won't see a whole lot of crime, but like I said, late 2008 when I crossed into Shenzhen, mainland China, the crime rate was quite high. Shenzhen has always been kind of a bastion of criminal activity because it's right on the border with Hong Kong. So people wanting to do less than savory things would cross over into mainland China, into Shenzhen, to find their prostitutes. Pretty much the entire city was historically built on prostitution. It was this weird kind of hole where people would go to do illegal stuff. Although there are legitimate businesses and things like this, that was a reputation Shenzhen had, and I certainly saw that. I mean, just walking across the border, I had people trying to take my bags. There was illegal taxi touts running up to me and dragging me to their cars. I saw street walking prostitutes, which I don't see anymore at all, just on the side of the road at night. I saw massage parlors and dodgy massages and all these neon lights, all these scantily clad women sitting amongst the pink light brothels. And when I got to Huizhou, which is the first city that I lived in, it was just more of the same. It was just a little bit less affluent, a little bit less rich. And yeah, it didn't feel super safe. But what happened was later on, I came to realize that if you're not seeking this stuff out and you're not involving yourself in this, it's not the same kind of crime that you would see back home in America or something like this. It's not violent crime. People aren't going to bother you for the most part, other than petty thieves. And China morphed into this place where I think on paper it wasn't fair to say that China was like a crime-free, very safe society, but what I would say is personal safety was quite high. Now, that's not talking about getting run over by a car or the horrific traffic I saw, but the enforcement of the law was something that I felt like I was in more of a Wild East scenario where the police wouldn't really do anything, and these businesses and illegal enterprises and ketamine dealers and all these things were kind of allowed to roam free, especially down south here in Guangdong, where I've pretty much lived the whole time. I was personally affected by things like I had my wallet stolen a couple times. I've been targeted in the street for, kind of xenophobic racism, especially whenever I was with a Chinese girl. And of course, I've tried to avoid fights and things like that. But for the most part, China's always felt pretty safe. When I lived up north in some of the more rougher areas, there was a lot more kind of mafia type crime. And when I say mafia, it's not the guys in the suits. It's just, local thugs that don't have work and wear big, shitty jade and gold chains and have tattoos and basically get paid to harass people. I used to see things like that up there, and there's some pretty scary stories of some of the stuff I've seen. But what I'm trying to get at is this whole lawlessness, this whole feeling of China's this place where pretty much anyone can do whatever they want, as long as they're not being too vocal or too kind of out in the open about it. And that is something that I've seen a drastic shift in. And there's some positives and negatives here. And the positives are, today, in 2017, I don't see open prostitution. I don't see as much open drug sales. I mean, there was a old woman next to my house that used to try to sell meth to people that were just eating at restaurants. You don't see that anymore. I don't see ketamine at the KTVs anymore. People trying to get you to do ketamine, and that was kind of like a tradition down here. I don't see as many thieves or pickpockets at all anymore. I don't see the stuff I used to see anymore, and that's actually because the law is taken a lot more serious here. And I don't know whether it's, the police getting more power or jurisdiction over their areas, but I do see a lot more public order now, especially in terms of traffic. I mean, people still drive like absolute maniacs here in China, but the kind of network of speed cameras and all these things that they've put into place have scared people a little bit straight. And I think that's straightened things out quite a bit, which is kind of cool. Also, there is a bit of a blossoming legal system here now, and you do hear of lawsuits in the news, and I'd say that's a positive and a negative. People do have a bit of a legal outlet right now to take care of things that have happened to them. Maybe they've been screwed over by a landlord. Maybe they've been personally injured. Divorce law is starting to get straightened out. So there's a blossoming, kind of budding judicial system here in China now. And it's something that I never thought I'd see, because China is a one-party state, kind of operates like a one-party state. You don't see the trickle-down effects of a huge police state until fairly recently. And I think there's a lot more local control over what's going on now. And in one way I can actually judge this, and this is kind of weird, but I used to get all kinds of WeChat messages on my WeChat, and it would show videos of really shocking stuff. And you can't let these videos kind of get you down or judge what's actually happening in China, because they might be isolated instances, but you'd see things like neighbors beheading each other. You'd see things like huge drug cartels kind of running through ports and people gunning each other down in a place that's not supposed to have guns. You'd see spray paint on the wall offering guns and drugs. You used to get messages of, people getting run over, which still happens, but much less now. You used to see fights and huge epic gang battles in places like Hunan and stuff like this, where, opposing gangs would be smashing each other with beer bottles and cutting each other up with meat cleavers. And you used to get videos of maybe families that owed money to a shadow bank or things like this, and the entire family is laying dead with knife wounds or bullet wounds. These get shared around like wildfire. Although like China's trying to cut down on the amount of information and videos and all kinds of stuff that you can send, it's still quite easy to send those kind of videos, and you just don't see those anymore. What I do see a lot of is in the news, huge drug busts. I see a lot of stories about police successfully raiding this and this and this, illegal banks and loan sharks being shut down. The kind of crackdown on all this kind of stuff, along with the crackdown on corruption, seems to be, at least on the surface, quite successful. And a positive of this is that I actually do feel like the crime rate in China is much lower now. Maybe I just can't see it. Maybe I'm having the wool pulled over my eyes, but by and large, China feels a lot safer and a lot more law-abiding than it used to. It just feels like a more normal country, and I think that's also one of the negatives about this. And that sounds ridiculous, because no one would ever say a lower crime rate is a bad thing, and it's not. It's fantastic, but it does kind of take away some of the lawless mystique to it. The average American might be used to living in a fairly policed society, and it's kind of interesting to go abroad, especially Americans that want to go to Europe or something, or Mexico, and they can actually walk down the street and have a beer without getting ostracized or arrested for public drinking. China was one of those places as well where you kind of wanted to escape the feeling of the cops always being on your ass. I mean, the familiar sight as an 18 to 21-year-old in America of having those police lights behind you and freaking out, not knowing what you did wrong, just being profiled by the fact that you're a young male driving a car. It was a common occurrence for me growing up, so the contempt for police is quite ripe amongst a lot of young males, I think, in America. But China was kind of this bastion of lawlessness, and it was scary and weird in the beginning, but you kind of get used to it, that society kind of runs itself and everything's kind of okay. You know, there are bad things going on around you, but you can avoid them as long as you don't get involved. And that's pretty much the only negative I can see. China's, I would say, by and large, China's just becoming more normal. It's just a more normal place. And I less and less feel like I'm in a foreign country, obviously, because I've been here so long, but I more and more feel like I'm in a society now that's developing into more of a civilized society, and you know, the legal system and laws are actually coming into fruition and actually being used. And I think it's kind of interesting to see this transformation, and I think I've gone through quite the change. You know, a lot of people say if you lived through Mao's time and watched the economic opening in 1979 under Deng Xiaoping, that was the time when everything was crazy and amazing and unbelievable. But I do think I lived in China in a time that was also really, really interesting, because you went from this like unbridled like capitalism where anything goes to now where the party actually does something about crime. And I am speaking in massive sweeping generalizations, but I thought you guys might be interested in what I've seen living here for so long now, and how China has kind of changed. It's not the same crazy wild east country that that I originally came to. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you like the video and you want to see more like this, just go down there and leave a little like on there, because if there's not enough likes, YouTube won't share the video around and nobody's going to see it. It's not going to hit the audiences that we're trying to expand this channel, and it would really, really help me out. I appreciate it. Also, if you are subscribed to me, a lot of people are saying they're not seeing my stuff pop up in their feeds, which is incredibly annoying. So I would click that little bell button next to the subscribe button, and they'll actually alert you when I actually make a video, because it's pretty annoying that YouTube is taking favor of channels that are playing the algorithm correctly. So we gotta play by the rules, kids. But anyway, I really appreciate you guys' support. If you want to see more, go check me out on patreon.com/laowinner. I'm also on Steemit, so I do some weekly articles there where I got back into writing, and it's pretty fun. Anyway, thank you so much, Laowinners, and I will catch you on the next one.